So I've been thinking a lot about my podcast, which if you're looking for red flags, that's a red flag when a man tells you that he's been thinking very hard about his own podcast. We're approaching a year here. Jesus, this might actually be a year. Holy shit. Closing in on 52 episodes, and I'm sort of starting to wonder, like, do I keep it going? I can't quit just now because my friend Matt Buckner at Sennheiser just sent me a couple of more super fancy mics, and I'm super grateful for that. So I gotta get a little of my spit on both of those mics before I wrap it up. I was wondering, I started this podcast because I was losing my mind. I feel like I'm better. It hasn't caught fire. Do I keep going? If you make art in the woods and nobody hears it, does it matter? Is it art? And then listening back to this podcast that I did with my old friend Ryan McKee, I'm like, fuck it, I got to keep going because these are meaningful to me, and I feel like sort of starting to figure out what this is about or where it's going. I mean, a lot of this is about sort of like touchy-feely male issues of the what it is to be a man and also have a conscience. What it is to be a man in your 40s and sort of reckon with the havoc that you wreaked when you were younger. And male intimacy and the importance of your sort of closest male friendships. When I was on tour with Jake, we had a long, protracted conversation about sex, and neither one of us made any jokes. And it was real weird because dudes don't talk about their feelings or specifically feelings about sex and intimacy unless it's just in the in the frattiest, locker roomiest way possible. But Jake and I were able to have sort of like a long, nuanced conversation featuring both talking and listening. It was incredibly helpful to me. I've known Ryan for 19 years now. He was in Phoenix and we hung out. When did we record this? November? October? I'm not sure. It all blurs together. But Ryan's been a successful writer and comedian, and he was one of the first people I met in Phoenix. I remember meeting him and Ron Babcock and thinking like how supportive and positive the Phoenix comedy scene is, and boy, fucking eat those words. But he's established a successful life as a creative, and so we sort of started talking. He's worked as a writer on the Late Late Show for James Corden. He worked at MTV and MTV2. He has sort of an admirable resume. So we started out talking about what it means to work as a creative, what it means to turn your passion into work, what it is to be a success at it. And then got into in your 40s, all roads lead to childhood trauma and your weakness and your addictions. And we ended up having a nuanced conversation about, dealing with not just the wreckage that we inflicted when we were drinking, but also the harm that was done to us when we were kids and those formative experiences. I'm also grateful to Ryan for us having a strong enough friendship that I'm able to pester him at sort of a delicate point in his life. Ryan is quitting drinking, and we were able to have sort of a very no holds barred conversation about why he needs to stop drinking, what's been going on, how he's gotten to this point, how he's recognized that it's the end of the road. And it's a real raw place to be because I've been there, and looking in the future is just sort of terrifying. But I'm really proud of this conversation. I feel like we're getting at something here that will be helpful to people. Yeah. So, Yeah, welcome back. I hope you're still listening. If you're not listening, you're not hearing me lecture you for not listening. So enjoy this conversation with my old friend, Ryan McKee.
Mr. Bali is catching up with friends who are arguably more talented than him.
Ryan McKee, welcome to the Actors Studio.
Thank you. This is not at all what I expected the Actors Studio to look like. But I suppose if what's his name fell on hard times, I can't remember what the guy's name who hosts it.
Me either. This is like the Guitar Hoarders Studio.
Yeah.
How are you, buddy? How is it being back in Phoenix in your old stomping grounds?
It's weird. You took me to a party last night, and I didn't know anybody there, but it was all the same people, if you know what I mean.
It's I remember,
not in a bad way. It's just in a surreal way.
Yeah. I remember Ontario in Canada was the first place we lived when I was a kid, and I remember going back there, like leaving when I was 8, and then going back when I was like 15 or something. And I remember going to the playground, and everything looked smaller, but still had like so much power over me because of like the memory that was attached to it. And whenever I go back somewhere, there's always like a little bit of that.
Yeah, I mean, the party we were at last night was in this backyard in downtown Phoenix, and you could look out and see the freeway. And I've been in so many situations like that, and but it's been like a decade probably.
It's like whenever I go back to New York, that more than any other city, I feel like New York is a place that's constantly rewriting itself. So it's, that bar closed down. This is the new spot. This is the new spot that's about to open. This is the spot that opened a while ago and that people no longer go to. And then there's like sort of this cast of characters of like, you know, the dude who looks like a crust punk, but everybody knows that he's like, you know, his father's a fucking oil exec or whatever. And I feel like there were definitely Phoenix archetypes on display last night.
Yeah. Good people. Just, definitely, I don't know. It made me a little nostalgic for it, but also like, oh, I guess I'm not really missing much.
Yeah. How long ago was it that you left Phoenix? Long time.
I first moved away from Phoenix in 2005. Yeah. Moved to LA for 3 years, moved to New York for close to 8 years, back to LA for a little over 5 years, and then now I'm in Wilmington, North Carolina.
The big time, baby.
Yeah.
Does it feel moving to Phoenix, like whatever, 4 years ago at this point in my life and at this point in my career, feels a little bit like victory and a little bit like defeat? Sort of like I'm retiring. Has Wilmington felt like that for you?
Yeah, it feels like that. It feels like a huge weight has been lifted off me after like moving out of LA and like being in that kind of, is constantly trying to get more opportunities, get better opportunities, try to stay ahead and keep the opportunities I had working for the Late Show with James Corden. And it was like an amazing opportunity. But while you're in it, you're just trying to tread water. Or at least I was just trying to tread water the entire time. So I wasn't really enjoying it that much. I was just trying to, it's the imposter syndrome, right? Like you're just trying to not let everybody know you're not actually supposed to be there. And like trying to hide it the whole time. And so it's weird. Getting a little distance from it, now I enjoy it looking back. And I love still doing stand-up, but there's like no big pressure now for it. So it's just more fun.
I miss so much the sensation that like, oh, maybe something's going to happen tonight. Maybe there will be but also it gets to be like like Red Bull or something, where the first time you get that stimulant, you're like, oh man, this is great. I'm going to drink Red Bull all the time. And then if you drink Red Bull all the time, you're just like cracked out, and there's no longer that thrill that like something, maybe something good's about to happen, and instead it turns into something bad's about to happen. Somebody will take my place.
But here's it's not even real. Like the fact that something going out in LA and you can do one show and the right person happens to be in the audience and it goes perfectly and your whole life changes, like doesn't happen like that anymore. Yeah. Like people don't, one thing doesn't like make somebody anymore. And it like nowadays you have to have like an amazing Instagram and an amazing stand-up set and like know this person and have like this thing going on. Like people aren't, people are wary of going all in on somebody anymore. And there's not like the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson that like you would do once and then it would change your life. Right.
Yeah.
Like there's just not that like, so I feel like, yeah, when I lived in LA and when I was young, like I always felt like my life could change tonight. And it never happened. And it also never happened for anybody else I knew. Maybe one person I can point to and say, yeah, I can think of like this guy, Harris Whittles, who RIP, he's sadly passed. But yeah, like I saw him do one set and it went brilliantly. And like before I knew it, like he was writing on Sarah Silverman's show. And so maybe that's one person I can point to, but everybody else that I know made it, like it was just a long slog for them too.
I feel like whenever I'm talking to younger comics or musicians or whoever, they want to know how I did what I did, how I got where I am, wherever I am. When I like unfold the story for them, and then I feel like I have to tell them like none of this is true for how it'll work for you.
Yeah,
because I definitely had the sort of like your name gets picked. And then your life changes forever. But I totally agree that it's more that you just over a period of minutes, days, hours, years, eventually you look back and you're like, oh yeah, I guess I did it.
I was doing it the whole time.
Yeah. And I didn't appreciate it.
Didn't appreciate it, but that's the thing. Like I feel like if you are a person that sits there and like truly tries to appreciate it, you might not work as hard and it might not work out for you. So there is this kind of double-edged sword of you have to be a little crazy and you're probably not going to enjoy it as much as you should. Yeah. But also, you might actually make it if you're a little crazy.
Tell me how the James Corden thing, how it happened, how it unfolded, how it evolved. Because we've known each other since 2004, I think.
Yeah,
and
right.
But like most of my friendships, we hang out every week for a month and then don't see each other for 6 years, and then and I feel like I didn't see you at all during that entire time that you were writing for him.
Yeah, I was mostly just working all the time. So, yeah, I mean, how it unfolded was that I was in New York. I was working at MTV. I worked at MTV for like 4 or 5 years, working mostly with MTV2 shows to create original online videos with their cast to, supplement the television show. And they were looking for somebody to do that at James Corden. My wife and I were looking to move out of New York. She was really burnt out on it. I wanted to move back to LA. She was kind of like on the fence about LA, but was willing to go there if it meant like getting out of New York. And so just, James Corden had just taken over the Late Late Show. Nobody knew who he was in America, but yeah, I knew they needed somebody, and it just happened really fast. Like I just saw that they were looking for somebody. I applied. I happened to know one of the comedians, Sean O'Connor, who was the first writers that they hired there. He put in like a good word for me, and before I knew it, I had the job. And then from doing that, I worked my way into like writing for the television show as well.
What was that like? Because I know you from me just being a fucking fall down drunk, and then you and Ron Babcock putting on like little shows at Paper Heart and stuff like that in Phoenix. I'm sure you'd had some success and had seen sort of your work on the MTV2 stuff. But then seeing it happen on the Late Late Show on TV, it's got to be kind of a fucking thrill.
It is it's totally a thrill, but like we're talking, you don't really stop to enjoy it, because especially when you're working for a daily TV show, it's good and bad, because if the show's never ready, it's just time. It's like 5 p.m. We have to go on. We have to tape it. So it's never as good as it should be. And so you're always constantly second guessing yourself, like, oh, that could have used another rewrite or whatever, but you just have to go. And so there's always that in the back of your head. And then the first couple of times you get a sketch on, you get a joke in the monologue. It's like this huge, celebration for yourself, but nobody else is like worried about it because they're already thinking about tomorrow's show, And so, it's great in that something can bomb and nobody remembers it. Something can go do great, but then nobody remembers it. So, it's a thrill. You and I were talking a little bit earlier, and you were saying how, when your memoir came out, you thought like your life would change in maybe this massive way. When I had won an Emmy, I thought there's this like feeling like, oh, okay, I've arrived, I've made it, and really nothing changes except for you can call yourself an Emmy winner, but like it's not like I was so much more in demand. It looks good on a resume. It looks good on whatever when people bring me up for stand-up shows, but like it doesn't really mean anything.
How did I not fucking introduce you to everybody at the party last night as, oh, this is my friend, Emmy Award winning Ryan McKee?
I'm so glad you didn't. It's I feel like it really, I feel like I always let people down.
Yeah. Oh, dude, absolutely. One of the things that it's weird where you get a certain level of success like that where you've been recognized in some formal way, but it's not like you're not like fucking Shaq where you're one word, where you're everywhere, where you become a fucking GIF, all that stuff. Because I remember doing shows where and people would sort of like point their thumb at me and be like, he's actually a best-selling writer, you know? And it was like an apology or like I'm so sorry or is in this world crazy that even that jerk can be, my friend, geez, I'm fucking spacing on his name now. The Clark Dever pointed out to me that I was a micro celebrity.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a perfect word because it means that you've achieved a level of success that will only be held against you.
Yeah, no, that's appropriate. That's appropriate. I feel like it does kind of feel like when people hear that have won an award or they're like, okay, now prove it to me. Prove it to me that you're actually funny or you're smart.
Right.
Or that you're whatever. And it's not necessarily that they're going to give you the benefit of the doubt. Some people will, but a lot of people, maybe it's more of like the male ego. It's like, well, let's see what you have now. You're not better than me. So you get some of that. I don't know. I feel like it's just like we were talking with it's not like a thing where your life just changes. You do one thing and it changes overnight in entertainment anymore. You have to keep doing it. Like you can't quit, like you don't win one award and then Hollywood's like, oh, you've now been, given the golden key to the secret room where all the jobs are. Like it just doesn't work that way.
I keep thinking of I've talked about sort of our culture as going from sort of one marker to the next, where now we move to a scrolling culture where maybe your tweet goes viral and then the next day you've gotten fucking,
you go back to your barista job.
Yeah. And you have 4 new followers for
exactly.
the 18,000 retweets you've gotten, or whatever. And I keep thinking of an amazing scene, which also now occurs to me as a horribly racist scene in the Dude, Where's My Car?
Okay.
A seminal text, not just for this
Don't
podcast,
remember,
but for my entire life.
I don't know if I ever saw it, but okay.
Where they're going through the drive-through, and I think they're ordering like Chinese food, and they put in their order, and the woman says, "And then," and he's like, and then I guess a Diet Coke, and she's like, "And then," and he's like, and sort of adds to the order a couple of times, and then she just keeps going, and then, and that's what I feel it's like being a creative, is that every, it's just another seminal text, that super dumb Tom Cruise action movie, The Day After Tomorrow, where it's sort of like the day keeps, it's like you keep dying and then it starts over again. And it starts over again, and at first when you start out, you're like, you have these sort of like naive ambitions of like, I'm going to do a thing, I'm going to write a book, I'm going to make a movie, I'm going to fucking write a #1 album. It goes from sort of like, I'm going to do everything to I'm going to do something to I hope nobody like obliterates me or erases me from the record or whatever,
Yeah, I'm not even like, I don't even think about, I used to think about what my legacy be. Like, I want my name to, I don't even think about that anymore. I just hope I make enough money to, I don't have to, like, where I can just pay for myself and have like a good life, Like, I just hope I don't have to be asking people for, can you get me a job selling solar panels or something? You know what I mean? Like, I hope I just don't have to do that. That's like my main goal now.
Repeat that quote from Bill Maher that you said this morning. The Bill Maher, an artist who you obviously agree with every single one of his perspectives and all of his politics.
I did not say that. Did not say that. Bill Maher. I read this quote when I was young, when I maybe was just starting, and it always stuck with me. He said, and I hope I'm attributing it to him correctly. He said, the race to, making it in show business, it's a race between bitterness and success. And if bitterness sets in before success never matters. So, and I think, you and I agreed, we've all seen these people who we would kill to have their careers, but they're not happy. Like when you actually hang out with them and see them, they're not enjoying what they're doing. It's just they are successful. They don't know what else to do. They don't know how to enjoy it.
Yeah. I've talked about this with Jake Flores a little bit, that he's, what he's done is sort of, he's made legit contributions to culture of like I want to say writing new cliches or, aphorisms, metaphors that, that like he tweets them and then they sort of go out in the universe, and I think his biggest thing or his first thing was when Trump was running for president and he said, it's like it's the final season of America and the writers are just going nuts.
Yeah.
And that went everywhere. He made nothing off of it. And then now it keeps popping up in different forms. So it's like
probably on T-shirts, places.
Yeah, cross stitch and the Wolf Blitzer read it on CNN, which is hilarious. So he had that success of making a contribution to culture that was so insightful that it disaggregated rapidly and everywhere. But he's been unable to monetize it, and then I feel like it's the opposite with my career, where I feel like I've done very little, and fortunately I have been able to monetize it. Where I was with Amazon, I was able to clean up when my ship came in. But I feel like that's part of the game too, is knowing that you'll never get you'll never get paid for your greatest hits. But maybe you'll get paid for the stuff that comes after, or the stuff that comes in between, or the.
Yeah. Agreed. And I don't think you necessarily. I mean, I don't know. I guess your probably most celebrated book is The Long Run. Do you think that's the best thing you ever wrote, though?
I don't even. I mean, I have no idea what's even in there anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it was such a long time ago, and I wrote that book in sort of kind of an emotionally naive state, and sort of in a panic too. And when I go back and look at it, if I go back and look at it again, I'm sure there'll be all kinds of things that I find where I'm like, ooh, stuff that doesn't hold up, or stuff that I regret saying, or that doesn't feel true to me anymore. But I mean, I guess as artists too, that we have to. And that's true for every, whatever field you work in, I don't know that, Tom Petty at the end of his life, that like Free Fallin' spoke to him anymore.
That's the thing. I think it's rare that a person who is a creator agrees that with whatever their most celebrated thing is, that it's actually their best thing. And so in my world, like I created this short form series with James Corden, and it was kind of like at the peak when everybody was trying to figure out like what short form series could be with like big stars, and it got nominated for the best short form Emmy, and it ended up winning just through a confluence of like luck and James's popularity at the time, and like kind of the newness of the.
Maybe it was also good.
Yeah, and it's
maybe
but that's
also
the thing.
good.
I think it's good, and I'm proud of it, but I don't think it's anywhere near as good as it should be or could be, or is. I don't think it's anywhere near the best thing I've written. And like I feel like a lot of my favorite things that I've written are still just on my computer and never got made for whatever reason. But maybe like that's the thing. It's like when. I think someone said this recently, like when you create a movie, you actually create 3 different movies. You write it, that's the first movie. You shoot it, that's the second movie. And then you actually have to edit it together and put it out there. That's the third movie that everybody sees. But there's really 3 different movies there because it changes so much in that process. And I feel like the stuff that I've written that never got produced because I never saw it, like it didn't let me down, because it never got produced. So I probably still hold that stuff as some of my favorite.
Yeah, you still have it sort of in its pristine form. That's one of the things that I've learned to do over the years recording music is knowing now when you go into the studio that the record you hear in your head is never the one that's going to come out of the studio.
And
you
same
have to
way with anything, yeah.
You have to be okay with making a record you like and not the record that you set out to make.
Yeah.
I'm going to do the thing to you that a lot of my friends do to me that fucking drives me nuts, where they're like, oh yeah, we're friends. I haven't read your book. I haven't listened to any of your records. I haven't listened to your podcast. I haven't done any of I haven't watched any of your shit on Corden.
That's fine.
Tell me what it was. Tell me about the short form thing that you did that won the Emmy, and also tell me about the end there, getting burnout.
Sure. So it was called James Corden's Next James Corden, and it was like a mock reality show where James decides he wants to pick his successor for the Late Late Show, but the gag is that he's going to be there for a long time. So everybody's auditioning are kids. So it's like a reality. It's like a reality competition show for children, and it's like James and Haley Joel Osment and Sabrina Carpenter, who's like a young singer songwriter / actress. They're like the judges, and it's just a 6-part series where he ends up. It's like mock competition, and then we get to the 2 finalists, and then a kid wins at the end. And it's all scripted. It's all just silly. And it just, I don't know. It was lucky enough to hit at the right time. That was in 2018. And then, when we shot that 2017. I think it won in 20. I can't remember. Anyway, 2018, 2017, 2018. And then 2019, I kind of, we were speaking of like, you think your life's going to change. I thought a lot more opportunity was going to come my way. I thought a lot more, I would be kind of doing a lot more with James than the Late Late Show. And nothing more was really coming of it. And, they said, the people in charge at CBS in subtextual ways and very forward ways said, listen, you're a white guy. You're a straight white guy in your 30s at the time. And, that's not really what we're looking for right now.
Yeah.
And I got it. And I totally agree that writers' rooms and producers, and it should be more diverse. Absolutely. I think it's a better product when it's more diverse because you get different perspectives. When you get a bunch of white guys up there, they're all making the same stuff. They're all making the same decisions. So I got it. But it also, that's what I got to work with. I can't change it.
Yeah.
So, when I became clear, my opportunities weren't really going to change that much at Corden, and they were producing, James's production company was producing another show based off of a British panel show that in England, it's called A League of Their Own. It's like a comedy sports panel show, and they were remaking it for a CBS audience. They renamed it Game On because it couldn't be called A League of Their Own because Amazon was making a League of Their Own TV series based on the movie, blah, blah, blah.
Nice.
And so they're like, we can have a producer role on that. It'll be kind of a foothold for you to kind of make your own thing. Mm-hmm. You get more, just more responsibility. You get to kind of help build a show from the ground up. And that was really exciting to me. And so we did it was with Rob Gronkowski and Venus Williams, and hosted by Keegan-Michael Key and Bobby Lee and Ian Carmel were on it. And it was super fun. We did the first season, and then the pandemic hit, and television shut down, and it was kind of lost. The first season aired, but everybody kind of missed it because it was in the middle of the pandemic. And
yep.
Yeah, I mean, I'm making excuses. Maybe it wasn't that good, but it didn't go anywhere. And that's when I decided to just get out of LA, and the pandemic was going on, and just started working remotely, and still doing that.
It's one of those things where with the straight white bro thing, our beliefs are really tested, because I believe in diversity and in elevating marginalized voices, and then when your job is on the chopping block, that's where the rubber meets the road. That's where you really have to be like, well, I meant for you guys, but not for me. I'm one of the good guys. You know,
I'm an ally. Let me be here. But also, I mean, that's and I'm sound like I'm making excuses, and I am. If I was talented enough, if I was next level talent, they would find a way, right, to put me in it. I just am not. I wasn't valued enough there. Whatever. I don't know. Maybe I'm talented enough. Maybe I'm not. They felt like they needed me. So certainly I know that if I was better, I would have a job and be moving up there still. But that's just the world. We also live in a world where people are having to be more cognizant of that. And so we are going to get left out on opportunities partly because of that. But also I agree. That's what white guys have had hundreds of years.
We had our chance.
So, and I had a decade of years when I could have been doing a lot more that I wasn't, before. So I'm not saying that political correctness is ruining my life as a white man. No, I just feel like there is a reality there too that, it's just things are harder to get jobs now.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about where you are now.
Okay.
I want to start with like tap back into the conversation we had in that Mexican place when you rolled through when we went to the Idols thing, and you told a story about hanging out with a childhood friend, and he was like, "Remember that time when your dad like threw you against the wall?" And you were like, "No."
Yeah. So it was.
Let's start there.
Yeah. Well, oddly enough, my wife has said for a long time, she's like, you display all like the textbook symptoms of somebody who was abused as a child. You sure you weren't abused as a child? And I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure. I mean, my dad was kind of a dick, but I just felt like he was kind of, par for the course, and everybody's dad was kind of a dick in the 80s,
Yeah. Of his generation.
Yeah, it was just kind of that world. He was a Vietnam vet, and I just think, whatever. So I didn't really think about it. And then during the pandemic, when everything kind of shut down and there's nothing to distract me anymore, that I started kind of having some memories of like, maybe things weren't as good as I thought. And then I was hanging out with my brother and his best friend who grew up, down the street from us more or less, and was always over at our house. And we were just sitting around having some beers, and he's like, you know what kind of memory sticks with me? I'm like, no. He's like, remember that time like you were bothering Tyson and I? Tyson's my brother. And I was like, they were trying to play a video game, and I think I was messing with them. And then my dad came in and just like threw me down and like sat on my chest and just started punching me in my chest, and then spit on my face. And I could smell the beer on his breath too. And so even as a kid, I was like, knew it wasn't like totally him, but I had not completely blocked that out, but I had like not thought of it in decades. Yeah. And it haunted him, like my friend,
Yeah.
And then my brother was like, oh yeah, dad used to do that to you. Like, and he started remembering times that I didn't remember. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I've been processing through therapy right now.
Is it the kind of thing that you still sort of have horrible, traumatic, scary memories of that you had sort of carried with you, or is it just the kind of thing that you had incorporated that experience of going through that into who you are?
I think it's the latter, and it's just, I grew up and, both my parents were teachers. We didn't have a lot of money, but we never wanted for anything. Like, we had a pretty good family structure as far as like aunts and uncles and stuff like that. And I had a decent life, but I didn't know where like the crazy crippling self-hatred came from, like I just hated myself so much, and like I felt so low about myself, and I didn't know really where it came from. And I'm kind of realizing now that that's where it was. And even more so than the physical abuse for me, I think it was like the emotional abuse. Mm-hmm. And I was never as much of a man as my dad wanted. I wasn't very good at sports. And like my brother recently, he told me, he's like, remember that time like dad was like, my brother's 4 years younger than I, and my dad was hitting balls to us, and we were like, practicing catching like grounders for baseball, mm-hmm. And so my brother, who was always very hand-eye coordination, like amazing, like he got stuff really fast when it comes to sports. And so he's 4 years younger than me. He's catching these like hard ground balls that my dad are hitting, and I'm missing all of them, right? Uh-huh. And I'm getting real frustrated because my younger brother, it's is better than me at something.
The reflexes of a writer.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm getting frustrated, and my dad, and I don't remember this, but this is my brother remembers, is him saying like, get the fuck off the field and go play with Barbies, you faggot. And like, you suck at this.
Wow.
And so it's like that kind of, and there was a lot of, I have those memories And those are the thing I think fucked me up. That I'm feeling better about it now, but like through my 20s and 30s, like where I didn't know it was coming from, you know.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's so weird. We've been friends for a long time through a lot of shit, and it's so weird to think of where we started and the sort of iteration of the friendship that we had, and then the now to be men in our 40s trying to sort out all the fucking childhood trauma and abuse that spurred us to act the way that we did. And that was one of the things that I heard all the time growing up was that, mental abuse is far worse than physical abuse. And my response was always, God, I remember this one fucking teacher was like, it was like early English literature. So like, Chaucer and Beowulf and stuff like that, and he asked if it was worse to be physically tortured or mentally tortured, and everybody said mentally tortured, and I said physically tortured, and he was like, and everybody looked at me like I was a jackass, and I was like, when's the last time you guys were physically tortured?
Yeah.
And I got a B- in that class. So, fuck you, man. But I think they were right, and I think I was wrong. My dad never laid a hand on me. My mom hit me. Mom, if you're listening, you hit me a bunch of times. Hope you feel horrible. You're a terrible parent. I have no ill will towards her, because of that. Maybe I could kick her ass now.
Yeah.
But my dad did little things to make me feel like I wasn't good enough, or that he would be happier if I wasn't around.
Yeah.
And man, like I carry that with me.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's totally like more so than like the verbal and physical abuse, just like him never, I'm like realizing he was never pleased. It didn't feel like he was pleased with anything I did.
Yeah.
Like I was never doing enough. I was never, fit. Like I was never fit enough for him. I was never whatever. I was always like too chubby, he thought. And so I was always like kind of chasing his approval. Mm-hmm. And we were talking about this today. Like I realized like, I'm separated from my wife now. I was with her for 15 years. But one thing about her is I felt like I was always chasing her approval. Like she's very hard to gain her approval, at least in like our relationship, right? And I think I looked up after doing it for 15 years and felt like, at what point was I even happy in this relationship? Like what? Like I was so focused on like trying to make her happy with me that I wasn't even like stopping to ask myself if I was happy, which was why like I think I started I'm not blaming it on her, it's my own thing, but why I started drinking so much was like I just, rather than confront all the things that were making me unhappy in the middle of the night, I would rather just like get a nice layer of whiskey between my brain and me,
It's kind of like you married your dad.
Yeah. And I've talked about this on stage before. It's never really gotten a good laugh, but I said like, a lot of guys, they say a lot of men marry their mom, right? Like that's an old cliche.
Yeah.
It's like, I married my father, and like, women aren't the only ones with daddy issues. Like you don't have the monopoly on daddy issues. Yeah. But I think I said like, my wife is charismatic like my mom, so yeah, but she's also impossible to please like my father. So I married both my parents.
So much of the people who listen to my music are fucking dudes with daddy issues. And
that should be your next album. Music for dads with daddy issues.
Duty issues. So let's talk about your wife and your drinking.
Yeah.
I've always known you to be a guy who enjoyed a good beverage.
Yeah.
Enjoyed getting a little twisted. We
used to be good drinkers together.
But I was so sort of myopically obsessed with my own drinking that I think that I never noticed that you were getting all almost as fucked up or as fucked up as I was.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, like I never had like the full bottom out like maybe you did, where, I mean, like the first year I moved to New York was like in 2008, and you were barely employed and like kind of barely holding on to a lot of your shit, you know?
Yeah.
And it was like you were in a rough, I think everybody looked at you and like, Mishka's in a rough place. And I never, for better or worse, I never had like that much go wrong, you know? And so it never really stopped me. It didn't, I don't know. I mean, it's not like a criticism towards you. Like, I was able to point to like, well, I still have a good job. I still have my marriage. And yeah, it's becoming less and less so. So I'm just bottoming out later in life.
Your own private 2008. It's weird to hear you say that, because I've written about that time in my life so much, and while I was going through it, I felt completely alone. And then now I've written about it so much that it feels like fiction, that I've sort of like mythologized that sort of like last year of my drinking. And I forget sometimes that there are people like you who were a witness to all that stuff. And I talked about this a little bit last night at the party, but I remember you and Ron driving me home from somewhere, maybe in LA, maybe we'd done a show together or something, and I was sort of in the back seat, like fading in and out of consciousness, and overhearing little glimpses of a conversation, between the two of you, and you're like, how's he doing? And I'm like, not good, and just hearing that and being like in that in between state of conscious and unconscious, where I was unable to sort of respond, be like, fuck you, I'm still alive. Like, I could hear every word you're saying. But also have all of it sort of fucking hit me and penetrate.
Yeah, I don't remember that particular instance. I do remember you being in LA with Beat the Devil, and there was Beat the Devil came to LA, right? I feel like you guys did. Yeah. I have a memory of you being in LA and with Chilpa, and I can't remember, I'm sorry, your drummer's name. He was very
Mitchell.
Nice. Mitchell, yeah.
Yeah.
And us doing like a crazy amount of blow.
That sounds accurate.
And drinking a lot to the point where like Ron was scared, which he's always kind of scared. But like we were really like, I remember even then thinking, and that was kind of like my peak of like pushing my limits for the first time. And it was like in my, mid 20s. And, even that, I was just like, Jesus Christ, this is like we were all just so out of our minds. It was probably that same trip.
I remember that run being, I think I had toured out to the West Coast solo, and then Mitchell and Shilpa flew out and met me, and then we toured back, and I ended up doing 6 weeks on one pair of jeans, and by the time that I got back, my jeans smelled like a cat had peed in a bag of Doritos. It was just crusty and like ugh. And that whole trip was chaos. And I if memory serves, I think we sort of like broke up on the way home in St. Louis. So it sounds like, similarly for like a lot of other people, the sort of like isolation of the pandemic is sort of what.
Yeah, I'm
really
not saying
made your drinking spin out.
Yeah, I'm not going to say my drinking was healthy before that, but I was able to kind of manage it, and there was multiple ultimatums with Anne, my wife.
Multimatums,
like, because I would be, I'd be great for like 6 months to a year, like as far as like I'd be drinking too much. I wasn't drinking like, I wasn't just having one, and going home, but I was like not embarrassing anybody. I wasn't blacking out. I wasn't embarrassing Annie. I wasn't peeing on anything, which had been a problem,
Mm-hmm.
And And so it would be fine for like a year, and then suddenly I would go overboard, black. I feel so bad. I've done so many shitty things to her in the past. Like, I got like blackout drunk the night before her uncle's funeral, like hanging out with her family. I was blackout drunk, telling her 2 female cousins to kiss.
Oh yeah, I love this shit. Oh, so good.
And like that didn't stop me from drinking more. Like, and then like, we'd gone to northern New York to hang out with some of her friends, and we had gotten so drunk, like hanging. It was one of those like all day drinking parties, and I got so drunk that I like peed in her friends' like ski boots, and like she's just having to. And she never was blacking out, so she had to remember all of this where I like forgot it. And so yeah, I got to a point where she was just like, "You gotta quit drinking." I'm like, "Totally." And you're totally right. And then like during the pandemic, I had the best of intentions to quit drinking, and it didn't last very long. But instead of, and I would like quit for like a month. And then instead of like falling off the wagon and admitting it to her, I would just hide it. And, I had really bad insomnia from the pandemic, and I would get so frustrated that I would hide booze in the house, like just for those times when I couldn't sleep. Mm-hmm. And I knew it was messing up my sleep more, but like in the moment, like I just didn't care, And again, like I was having these weird memories. I just didn't want to be alone with my head. And in the middle of the night, that's like the worst time to be alone with your head, right?
Yeah.
And like I'm beating myself up because I can't sleep. I'm beating myself up because I'm not able to stay sober for my wife. And it just got dark. But like she never caught me. And I probably could have kept going like that, but it was just, we had been having other problems, and I was just like, and she was really still trying to fight for the marriage. I kind of wanted to get separated and see how we do, like just separated for a while. Mm-hmm. Just, and she didn't want to, and I just kind of like, well, I got to be honest then, like this is what you're fighting for. Like I've been drinking and lying to you about it. Like if you want to still fight for this relationship. She's like, no. So we're like legally separated now. You have to be legally separated for a year in North Carolina before you can apply for divorce. And I'm working on being sober, and if we can fix our relationship, like that's cool. If we be happier solo, it's not hostile at all. Like we're both friendly, so that's where we're at.
Listening to you talk, I was reminded of this, the great quote of, Lord, save me from temptation, but not yet.
Yeah.
There have absolutely been times in my life with alcohol and with ketamine last year where I was like, I know I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
And I know I'm not at the end of the road yet. And then all of a sudden, it's sort of like the Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner thing where all of a sudden there's like the road ends. And you're like, oh, fuck, this is it. This is the end of the road. That's it. Was there one specific moment where you were like, oh, fuck, this is it? Or was it just an aggregation of shitty night after shitty night after shitty night?
I mean, there is an aggregation, but also, I mean, the images that come into my head are like, I got drunk on, I'm only a few weeks not drinking. I got drunk on Halloween, and I was dressed as Fozzie Bear, and people were taking photos of me, and like the costumes falling over. I'm just like a drunken mess, and it's like so obvious in the photos, and to the point where like this is very sweet comic in Wilmington. Her name's Annie Witter, and she was like, I didn't tag you in the photos I posted on Instagram because I didn't want to embarrass you. Like when people are telling you that, like, oh yeah, that's So
you're not like the hero of the photo. You're the object.
Right.
You're no longer the subject. You're
right. Yeah.
Look at that guy.
Like,
Let's go take a picture with him.
God, that guy's drunk. Yeah. Well, the point where you're like, all right, I'm 43 now. Like, I can't be getting. I mean, that's never good to be that drunk, no matter what age you are. It's maybe passable if you're in your 20s and you're just kind of learning, but like, Jesus, 43, Ryan, like, get it together.
So how many days have you been sober now?
It's been 3 weeks, a little over 3 weeks.
And are you quitting drinking or are you an alcoholic?
Well, you asked me this earlier, so I knew this question was coming, and I don't know the answer to that yet. I don't know. I guess I would ask you why that even matters.
When the last time that I quit drinking, I was writing for New York Press, and I remember doing an interview with Orrin Canfield, who's a noise musician. He's the son of Jack Canfield, the Chicken Soup for the Soul guy, and he was a horrible, junkie shooting speedballs, and he plays in a band called Child Abuse. The wonderful guy, beautiful dude, great writer, fantastic book. And we were, I was like interviewing him in the park, and we were sort of talking about, addiction and stuff. And I told him that like I'd quit drinking, but that wasn't really sure if I was an alcoholic or not. And he looked at me and he was like, "Dude, you're an alcoholic." And I was like, "Go fuck yourself." How dare you? You don't even know me, man. We were like, I'm interviewing you. How dare you put that on me? And he was right. And I think it's a valuable question because when I was able to sort of articulate that ugly word and apply it to myself, set myself free in two ways. One is that I set myself free of the fear of becoming an alcoholic because I was like, I'm here.
Yeah.
We talk about like, work as a creative and you never really arrive. And I was like, well, I arrived as an alcoholic. And the other thing is then it sort of mentally set me free to realize that I could never drink again and that I could. And so it took the responsibility away from me of that question of maybe I can drink in 6 months or maybe I can drink in a year. If you have to take 6 months off of drinking, if you have to take a year off of drinking, you're a fucking alcoholic. And it's like, if you're able to successfully take a year off, it's not proof that you're not an alcoholic. It's proof that you are.
Yeah.
And that you're so committed to it that you're going to do this stunt of proving to everybody that you can take a year off and then fucking go right back to it because...
And this is a great spot to plug your book. How to Quit Drinking Cold Turkey.
The flip side of that, though, is you don't need to answer that question if you don't want to. Give me the top 10 positive things that drinking brings into your life.
Also, great plug for your book on Audible, guys. Check it out. No, it's not that I don't have any good reasons to keep drinking, and I don't have any good arguments for why I'm not an alcoholic. I'm probably an alcoholic. I'm not sure that... Here's the thing. You say in your book that you don't believe in Alcoholics Anonymous, but you support everybody who needs it to get sober. You support it as a community. You would never do it. There's problems with it. There's problems with every community, but you understand why people need it. Like, they need to admit that they're powerless over alcohol.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what you're admitting too by saying you're alcoholic, right?
The powerless thing, that's one of the things I always choked on because I don't I kept coming back to that question of, am I powerless? But there were times where like I'd go out one night and have one beer and go home, or I'd quit for a period of time. And those were my evasions of like, well, if I can just have one drink and go home, then that proves I'm not powerless, because powerless is such an absolute thing.
Right.
And
so I guess right now that's what it feels like admitting by saying I'm alcoholic, that I'm powerless over it. I don't know if I believe that. I also agree with you in the sense that, like you say in your book, like, yeah, I could probably have one tonight and go home, and I could probably have one tomorrow and go home. But at some point, I'm going to slide off the rails.
Yeah.
And honestly, like, that's what it's always been for me. Like, I will have a scary night, and then I'll be good for a year or 6 months or whatever. And then the scary nights always catch up back up with me,
Yeah.
And recently, in the last year, there's been more scary nights than good, not even scary nights, but just like not good nights.
Yeah.
Like I used to have so much fun drinking.
Yeah.
And while like there's still a lot that it's hard to detach like a lot of the good times from the drinking, but like in my head. But I mean, that's where I'm at. I don't know. Like I realize like I really need to stop, and that's what I'm working with right now. I've certainly been trying out the term alcoholic. I told my mom I'm alcoholic, but it was more to maybe hurt her feelings.
The spite confession.
Yeah, but I'm trying it out,
So let's try and reframe the conversation. When I wrote The Long Run, and when I sort of shared that story with my friends who I think you saw some of my sort of spin out towards the end, but but obviously you didn't see like the shit that I was hiding,
yeah.
And I think
I had no idea how bad it was. I knew you were not in a great spot, but I was also bummed that my drinking friend was gone.
Yeah. I definitely got that from a couple of people. But when and this is not to sort of steal anyone else's experience or compare my experience to somebody else's. However, when I wrote The Long Run and shared it with my friends and people I'd worked with in the world at large, and admitted to being an alcoholic, I had the sensation of coming out. Of finally having perhaps a little more insight into what it's like to live your life closeted, and then just tell people, this is who I am.
Yeah.
This is who I've been this entire time. I've been hiding it. I've felt incredible shame about it. But now we're gonna pray the AA away. No, Yeah, alcoholism and sexual orientation, two things unaffected by prayer.
Yeah,
but it was such a tremendous relief off me, from me, that it's sort of like I'd been trying to protest so hard to everybody that I wasn't an alcoholic, that I was still in control, that I could still keep it together, I could still make it to my job, whatever. And then when I was finally like, I can't, I felt a tremendous amount of relief. And then to carry that the sort of gender analogy of seeing your experience, or understanding alcoholism and addiction in terms of sort of like sexual orientation.
Yeah.
We're evolving to a point as human beings where I don't give a shit anymore if somebody only fucks women, or only fucks men, or usually fucks women and fucks the occasional dude, or they are married to a woman but they jerk off to to trans porn, or like, I don't give a shit about what people's sexuality, what their sexual lives are, as long as they're fulfilled, they're comfortable with themselves, they're enjoying their life, and the rest of it's sort of like irrelevant to our friendship. Similarly, I think that we don't need to. It may not be necessary at this point in your recovery to define yourself as an alcoholic or not, and instead ask sort of a question on the spectrum of, does alcohol bring more good things into my life than bad things? Right. And I think you can say pretty definitively that, it doesn't, that it's mostly bad. But also I have a lot of friends who are pretty avowed lesbians now, and they, for a period of their lives, they were, cis women married to cis men, raising kids and having families and whatever. And they're able to look back on their past and say, oh yeah, no, that was my life, and we're friends now, and I have 3 beautiful children from that marriage, and here's my partner Janice. That they're able to integrate the entirety of their experience and say, I'm grateful that I met David when I did, and that we didn't in hindsight, maybe I knew at the time that our relationship wasn't going to last forever, but I got good things out of it, and I'm grateful to have traveled that path. Yeah. And it's not who I am now. That's
what I'm hoping. Like, I can look forward and say, like, I used to be an alcoholic, now I'm a lesbian. But I'm glad I traveled the path.
Don't do that when I have a mouthful of seltzer. There's a seltzer right there for you if you're... But like, I'm at a point now that I'm almost 14 years sober. I'm at a point now where I'm not just grateful to be sober. I'm grateful to have been an alcoholic, and I'm grateful to like have done all the shit that we did, and to have done all that crazy stuff. And I think you may have to sort of like be a little generous with yourself when you're reflecting on your drinking life. I remember 10 years ago, you went out and did the Tough Mudder half marathon. Did you do one, or you did 2 back to back, or
No, I did. Well, I did a Tough Mudder, but I also did a couple of the half marathons that New York does. Each borough has their own half marathon. I did like 3 of them, I think.
Yes, I know it's in my book, Ryan. But I feel the Tough Mudder. I remember that we sat down and had a conversation, and that you had done it with like no training. Yeah. Would you do that again today?
No, but yes. I'm much older.
Exactly, and that's perfect analogy for your drinking life.
Yeah.
The things that peeing in ski boots in your how old were you when you did that?
I was like in my early mid 30s.
Okay, so yeah, peeing in ski boots in your mid 20s, totally fine.
Yeah, right. People are going to forgive you then.
And then as we get older, we have to retire some of that behavior, and some of that is it's just the like. Some of it is because alcohol is a poison. It destroys your body, mind, and soul. And no matter what you want to do in your life, alcohol will always be an obstacle. And then part of it too is it's just a function of age and youth and the shit that we did when we were younger that made sense, like running a fucking Tough Mudder on 0 training.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that something you've said, and I think it's in your book too, but it's not that I want to drink anymore and do cocaine. It's that I want to be 25 again, because that's what I did.
Yeah.
And like, I was pining over an ex-girlfriend from my 20s, and you said the same thing to me. And I think that is a good way of, as we get older, looking at things we're nostalgic about. Are we nostalgic about it because we really enjoyed it, or do we just want to be 25 again? And there is something very appealing about that. But also knowledge, you know that, you know, why you're doing things you're doing. Is it just to reclaim your youth, or is you really want to still be doing it?
We were taking a sort of a little trip down memory lane last night, talking about Beat the Devil and Fresh Kills and some of the bands that I played in, and the girls we dated and the mistakes that we made, and thinking about all of that. Most of it, I was miserable during most of that time, and I would go back there in a fucking heartbeat.
Yeah,
and that's one of the, and you know. Maybe it's not just alcohol that's toxic as much as nostalgia, you know, that it's so easy to, John Fante has this great book called The Wine of Youth. And it's, it speaks to both of those things, you know, that it is intoxicating to be 25, living in New York City and like starving.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm getting kicked out of this bar.
Yeah.
You know, it's very cinematic, and it's easy to recall that shit fondly. And, but also I remember a lot of that stuff, and it was fucking miserable.
That's the thing. Like, I mean, you say like you go back there in a heartbeat. Like for most of my life, I would not go back to it, but since it was so hard. But there's this period that I remember so fondly, in that when I had just graduated college and was just starting to really do stand up with Ron Babcock and all my friends here in Phoenix who were starting off in like that same like 2003, 2004 time. And that I look back on that time with just so much like reverence, because it was like an exciting new trick I was learning, which was stand-up comedy. And it was working to the point where like I wasn't getting booed off stage, you know, like I was sometimes making people laugh. And there was all this hope for the future of like moving to LA and making it, you know, and so maybe I would go back to that point. However, now that I'm in Wilmington and doing the comedy scene there, it feels very much like my comedy scene starting in Phoenix, because there's like people are there, and a lot of the comics are kind of newer or younger, or they've been doing it for a while, and it's not like their livelihood, it's not their life, it's just something they enjoy doing. And that's kind of so you can kind of reclaim those moments, you know, like in weird ways. Like there's something about being a medium-sized fish in like a smaller pond, you know.
I was talking to Babcock the other day, and we were talking about how worried we are about you, and how hard it is to see a friend, you know, in trouble, and how much we love you. And we were also, you know, sort of talking about comedy now and where we are in our lives with performing, and you know, that there were definitely points in my life where, you know, where I knew you and Ron, where I was counting on, you know, I got to make at least $30 at the next show so that I can fucking eat, or I got to sell a CD so I can eat. And I'm not there anymore. And you know, Ron has a wife and a kid and a job, and we are at a point in our lives where we can pursue, you know, comedy or music as a hobby, as something fun, you know. And I was telling Ron it's kind of great that we're no longer as like grinding and serious about it, because we can sort of get back to what it was about originally, which is like having fun and the laughs. And Ron was like, Mishka, it was never about the laughs. Like, what are you talking about? You know? And I was like, oh, fuck. Yeah. I think for such a long time, you know, that it was about trying to prove something that like, I can do this, you know, I'll show you fuckers. And then hopefully we're reaching sort of a point of grace in our evolution that, hopefully now at this point, it's about the laughs.
Yeah, I feel like I'm enjoying stand-up more than I ever did. Like the actual stand-up, 'cause I'm not trying to get anything out of it. I'm just, other than having like a great experience that night and hopefully building on it, whereas when I was doing it before, like every show felt like life or death to me, because I thought that was like I needed like so much approval to tell myself to keep going, because like everything was telling me when you start off, everything's telling you to stop.
Yeah. There's no,
like literally and figuratively, like people are like, why would you go down this path? It's so hard to make it. And also, like, when you start, you're not good, and so there's audiences. That's the thing about stand-up. You can't fool yourself. You can fool yourself a little bit, but it's not like you're just playing a song and people are nodding their head. Like they have to actually be laughing, and if you're not getting the laughter, you're not doing well. But you have to lie to yourself and tell yourself that it's going well to keep going. And geez, like, yeah, just even thinking about it makes me not want to go back to those times. But now I feel like I am just really enjoying it for what it is.
It is such a psychopathic venture, and I think that's why, like, a lot of sort of, first year open micers are telling people, tell themselves like people aren't laughing because I'm speaking the truth, it's like, no, they're not laughing because you're not funny.
Right.
Or you're openly racist. So right now you are, you're unemployed.
Yep.
You're separated.
Yeah.
You are living in Wilmington, North Carolina,
yeah,
in a house that is not your house.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have a house. I'm going, I was staying in a friend's guest house, and it's rented for December, so I had to get out of there. I rented a different guest house. That's all. So I have December covered, and that's it. And I oddly enough, like about 2 days after my wife and I decided that we're really going to finally try this full separation, I got laid off for just totally separate thing. It wasn't because I was drinking and undoing my job. It was just like the company wasn't making enough money. They had to lay off people. It was kind of just, I was unlucky enough to be in it. But gives me 6 months severance, so I'm going to just try to figure out my life, And you forgot to say, I'm also lying to myself about being an alcoholic. So,
oh, yeah. We'll feather that in. Buy my book. So this podcast is going to go up, December 14th, 15th, roughly 2 weeks from now. Where do you hope to be 2 weeks from now?
Hopefully able to hear the podcast where I can listen to it.
Hopefully above ground.
Above ground. You know what? That is a very good question, dude. I have been talking to my therapist a lot about this. I don't know what I want my next job to be. I don't know if I want it to be working in comedy still. I've been working in sports gambling content industry the last couple of years. I don't know if I still want to do that. So yeah, man, I don't know. Hopefully in 2 weeks, I just have more of an idea of where I want to be. And that's the best I can hope for. But, I do want to give a shout out, in case he's listening, to my buddy Matt Milner in Wilmington, who is a fan of yours. He saw you, speaking of like, what'd you call it? Micro celebrity? What'd you call yourself?
Oh, yes.
I had, like, last time I was in town here in August, I'd posted a photo of us, and he was very impressed. He's like, you know who Mishka is? I was like, yeah, we're old buddies. And he's like, wow. I guess he had seen you on like the Doug Stanhope Unbookables tour or something like that.
Okay.
And he read your books. He's been a fan ever since. So if he's listening to this podcast, shout out to Matt Milner, very funny comic in Wilmington.
Matt, if you're listening, you're terrible and I hate you.
He'll be so excited about that.
There's your outgoing voice message. I think everything you're saying makes sense. When I first got sober, I had no idea that was a question that terrified me. I had no idea like where I wanted to go or who I wanted to be or what I wanted to do. And I was sort of at a point in my life where I was like, well, the music didn't happen and the writing didn't happen. And the good news is that I'm sober and I discovered that I can run, and I'm just going to like buy shit on Craigslist and then sell it on eBay. And that's going to be my life. And that's enough. That's okay. You know, I was like so grateful to have come out the other end.
I still can't believe you're in your young 30s and you're like, it's all just not worked.
I gave up early and often. That's what I'm giving up.
But that's the thing. If I had asked you back then, like you were like a couple months sober, but you had your feet underneath you, and I'm like, well, what do you want to? If I had said, what do you want to do now, and you had said, yeah, I think these Amazon singles are gonna be a thing. I've been like, yeah, good luck with that, Mishka. Like, you never know where the next thing is coming from. That's like the great thing about entertainment, I guess, or being a creative. You know, like you never know where that next job is coming from. You don't know what that weird opportunity is gonna be. Because I would say that like Amazon singles didn't really work out for Amazon.
Yeah,
worked out amazing for you.
Yeah.
So the fact that you were able to get something from that, you got to be open to it. And yeah, man, like the fact that it all worked out is like just such a fun story about how, you know, I never knew you as a writer. I didn't even know that you had gone to Columbia and got your MFA until like you started writing.
I think a lot of people were really surprised when they found out that I could string a sentence together.
Like, I always knew you were a good writer. Your songs, I wasn't listening to your songs for your sexy voice. I was listening to it because they were so interesting. Like the lyrics, I don't know why, but like the lyrics, like always stuck with me. Like the potato peels didn't turn to vodka like I had hoped, or in the sink. Something I'm butchering it, but like you had like these great images, so I knew you were a good writer, but I had no idea you could write a story.
The worst thing about that line, which is now probably the most popular line I've ever written, the potato peelings in the sink did not turn into vodka as I had hoped, is that wasn't even something that I necessarily wrote. That was just a thing that happened that I was reporting on. my old roommate Sam Sachs like peeled potatoes and fucking left the peelings in the sink, and then like 4 days later the whole house stunk, and I was just like, well, guess they didn't turn into vodka. Like even just having this tiny little dream, that's not going to come true. And so I don't feel like I as much wrote it as I was just reporting on my pathetic alcoholic life. But that's been pretty much all your writing. Yeah, it's worked.
I mean,
I figured out my shtick early on.
Yeah, your memoir writing it's part of your songwriting. It's part of your actual writing.
One weird thing is that thinking back onto that, the time when I was like newly sober, you know, when I was a couple months in, that's the only time that you've referenced in this podcast, you know, in my life that I'm not eager to go back to, because early sobriety was so tough and so tricky and so much uncertainty, and I don't know. That's one of the reasons why why I'm talking to Ron Babcock these days. Why we're concerned about you is that you are at a moment of great opportunity. You have an opportunity here to totally reinvent yourself and reinvent your life, and move forward in a direction that's happier, healthier, more fulfilling. Or you also have enough rope to hang yourself.
Absolutely. But like, I'm not, I should be less optimistic, but I guess like I've always, I would say that like Ron Babcock, and we'll talk about him way too much for people who don't know him, but he's a very optimistic, like, positive person in his everyday life.
So fucking gross.
And and like to the point where I used to get annoyed with him. But like looking back over my life, while I never thought I was an optimist, or no one ever called me an optimist, like the fact that I pursued this career path. The fact that I thought, you know what, like I'm not good enough now, but I think I can get good enough at writing and comedy where I can make a career of this, despite everybody telling me it won't work. Like, I moved to LA thinking this will somehow work. I don't know how. It'll somehow work. And then I moved to New York, thought the same thing. And then I moved back to, and it's never worked like I thought it was going to, but it's worked. I'm here. I have money. I don't, I'm still doing it. And so I kind of just feel like that with this. Like, I feel like I don't know how it's going to work out yet, but it will,
I honestly feel that way too. There's definitely like an air of finality to this, and a lot of the things that you've done do reassure me that you are like fucking headed in the right direction. Where can people find you? Where can people find your stuff?
Yeah, you can find me theryanmckee.com for my website. Everything is linked there. You can check me out on Instagram. That's where I've been posting most of my like stand-up stuff. It's just at Ryan McKee. Didn't need the. And that one I was an early enough adopter. And then check out my book, Mastroposo Anthology, on Amazon. It's a collection of interviews I did with comedians and entertainers from like the mid-aughts, like before comedy went viral. Like, I was interviewing everybody from Dave Attell to Jim Gaffigan. And during the pandemic, I put it all together in a book. It was like the zine that I had published with Ron Babcock. Mishka wrote stuff for it, and you're in the book. And check it out. Mastroposo Anthology on Amazon.
It really is. It's a fucking killer document of all the shit that was bubbling below the surface before the huge like comedy explosion that we've seen recently. Ryan, thanks for doing the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
I love you, buddy.
Love you too, bud.
Yeah.
We just high-fived.
I know. Awesome.
So they could hear, the listeners know that what that was.
I like the
that wasn't
helpful
just
footnote.
That wasn't my dick slapping his ass.
Yet. Folks, thank you so much for listening. I know there's a million podcasts out there. We appreciate you spending your time with us. If you're digging the show, if you're enjoying it, if these conversations move you, make you laugh, annoy you, piss you off, please take a minute to rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcast. It helps us grow the show, and it helps other people find it. If you'd like to hear bonus episodes, song demos, just sort of ranting off the cuff conversations, all sorts of different bonus material, writing advice, personal blog posts and stuff like that, go to patreon.com/Mishka Shabali. We will be having monthly episodes up there with my mom and I answering questions from readers, and there's all kinds of good stuff there. Thank you so much for supporting.